Hopefully people are safe, practicing social distancing. We see that a number of governors have shut down all non-essential businesses, okay? And we see a lot of that taking place even here in the state of Michigan and the city of Detroit, et cetera. All right, so let's look at the updates from the Washington Post. So Donald Trump announced Sunday, March 22nd, that the federal government has activated the National Guard to assist New York, California, and Washington. The states of New York, California, and Washington, three of the states hit hardest by the novel coronavirus. Now, during Sunday's task force briefing, which there was not a lot of new information in that task force briefing. Donald Trump did a lot of rambling. Also, it's suspected that Donald Trump is jealous of the attention that Governor Andrew Cuomo is getting from the great state of New York, okay? Because if you look at Andrew Cuomo's press conferences, his press conferences are much better than Donald Trump's, okay? His press conferences are much better than Donald Trump's. He has a lot more information that he gives, a lot more factual information, and people are talking about that. People are calling him President Cuomo because he's acting presidential, okay? So some people suspect that Donald Trump wants to continue to be there at the press conferences because he doesn't want Governor Andrew Cuomo to show him up. All right, so some people suspect that, and I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot to that. Governor Andrew Cuomo is from New York. He and Trump have tangled in the past, so I think there's a lot to that. All right, shout out to everybody watching us on YouTube. Somebody said the signal's breaking up slightly, and I'm operating off the Wi-Fi here in the station, so hopefully this will clear up. We're also broadcasting on 910 AM Superstation's Facebook fan page, 910 AM Superstation on Facebook as well. I don't know what's going on with the internet tonight. All right, so Trump announced Sunday at the press conference that the federal government has activated the National Guard to assist New York, California, and Washington, three of the states hit hardest by the novel coronavirus. Now, during Sunday's task force briefing, Donald Trump also appeared to make light of the news that Senator Mitt Romney is self-quarantining because of his contact with Senator Rand Paul. Now, we know Senator Rand Paul, Republican from Kentucky. Half the time Rand Paul doesn't make any sense. He's really a libertarian, okay? Half the time he don't make any sense, okay? He was diagnosed with the coronavirus today. Now, he didn't have any symptoms, okay? Senator Rand Paul didn't have any symptoms. He was asymptomatic. So people are asking the question, well, wait a second, you have doctors who are trying to get tests for their patients who do have symptoms and can't get tests. Even though Mike Pence has said all these tests are out there, yes, there are more tests that have been sent out. Yes, the hospitals have more tests than they had 2 weeks ago, but there's still a lack of tests. So a lot of people are asking the question, well, wait a second, how is it that Senator Rand Paul, who didn't have any symptoms, can get a test? How is it athletes and entertainers can get tests, but people who have symptoms and their doctors asking for tests can't get tests? So earlier Sunday, March 22nd, it was announced that Senator Rand Paul, Republican from Kentucky, has tested positive for the novel coronavirus, becoming the third member of Congress and the first senator to confirm infection. Senator Mike Lee, Republican from Utah, and Senator Mitt Romney, Republican from Utah as well, announced that they would self-quarantine because of their recent contact with Rand Paul. Now, we know that Vice President Mike Pence and his wife took a test. It came back negative, okay? Now, it's interesting. So a lot of people are wondering, well, how many more members of the Senate are going to get the coronavirus? Because a lot of people in the Senate in the 70s and 80s. Okay, this is like a lot of old people in the Senate. All right. Well, maybe don't call them old elders, but there's a lot of people over 60s, a lot of people in 70s, 80s in the Senate. So U.S. stocks futures tanked when pre-market trading began at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday, March 22nd, not long before Senate Democrats blocked a massive coronavirus stimulus bill from moving forward Sunday in the Senate. Okay, now this bill that Republicans put together is a lot of people have been criticizing this. This is really a bad bill that Republicans have put together. It helps corporations much more than it helps everyday people. It helps corporations much more than it helps small businesses. And then you have industries like the airline industry and the cruise industry, and they want a bailout. So this is causing people to say, well, wait a second. We're not going to bail you out for you then to use taxpayer money, taxpayer dollars to buy back stock to increase your stock value. Okay. And at the same time, a lot of these corporations, when they got that $1.4 trillion tax cut, which benefited the top 10%, especially the top 1%, it added almost $1 trillion to the national debt. A lot of corporations took that money that they saved and they didn't pass it on to their employees. What they did was they bought back stock, which then reduces the number of shares of stock that are on the market, which then, based upon the principles of supply and demand, increases the value of the shares, which increases the value of for the shareholders, their board members, their CEOs, etc. Okay, and when you go research this, a lot of those companies, after they bought back stock, they started implementing more automation and more robotics and things like this in their plants, and were eliminating employees, laying off employees. So Washington Post has an article, and we'll give you some information from NBCnews.com as well. Computers run a little slowly, so just bear with me here. There's so much going on. But if we look at this from the Washington Post, Senate falls far short of votes needed to advance coronavirus bill as clash between Republicans and Democrats intensifies. Senate falls far short of votes needed to advance coronavirus bill as clash between Republicans and Democrats intensifies. With Democrats opposed, procedural vote fails on $1.8 trillion package in Senate. Talks continue, but Nancy Pelosi indicates she'll move forward on her own. So Democrats in the House of Representatives are going to put their own stimulus package out there. That one, you're going to see a big difference between that one and the one Republicans are pushing. Senate Democrats blocked a massive coronavirus bill, stimulus bill, from moving forward on Sunday as partisan disputes raged over the legislation that's aimed at arresting the economy's precipitous decline. Now, lawmakers had hoped to pass a massive $1.8 trillion bill by Monday, but Sunday night they were scrambling to revive talks with the stock market poised for another sharp drop and households and businesses fretting about an uncertain future. Okay, now if you've been watching my broadcast throughout the week, you know I've talked about how people during 2016 presidential election, they said we don't need to vote, we just need to do economic empowerment and invest in the stock market. Remember that? How's that working out for you? A lot of those businesses are shut down now because the governor shut them down. The governor had to shut the businesses down because if you've been following this, the governors have been talking about a lack of leadership coming from the White House, coming from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, mainly coming from a lack of leadership coming from Donald Trump. This is an example of how elections have consequences. Politics and government regulate the environment that your business operates within. So a lot of those businesses are shut down or they're severely hampered. So restaurants are now can't have patrons dining in. They have to do carry out only. They may be able to cater some events if they can still get events if they have clients that haven't been laid off. We saw that, earlier this week I talked about how the unemployment claims have skyrocketed. You had about this past week, about 2.2 million people filed for unemployment this past week. This is having a devastating, crippling effect to the economy all across the country. So it's not just economics, it's not just investments, it's also politics, it's both. We need to do all of it. I'm all for economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, things like that. My degree's in business administration. I've taught entrepreneurship, help people start businesses, critique their business plans, help them get funding for business. I managed a company where we had contracts with the city of Detroit, the county of Wayne, the state of Michigan. We were employing African Americans. Been there, done that. So but I also know the impact that politics and government has on business. We're seeing it now. We're seeing it firsthand. This is going to be a test case. In every business school across the country, they're going to study what happened here and how malfeasance in the White House crippled businesses across the country. This is a textbook case right here. In business school, we do case studies, and we study various businesses. We study various historical events that have an impact on business. It could be a stock market crash, what have you. This right here, this is the mother of all case studies. Every business school in the country, even the ones that are only online, are going to be studying this for years to show the relationship between government and business. So lawmakers had hoped to post a massive $1.8 trillion bill by Monday, but Sunday night they were scrambling to revive talks with the stock market poised for another sharp drop and households and businesses fretting about an uncertain future. Negotiations continued even as the initial procedural vote fell short, with 47 senators voting in favor and 47 opposed. The tally was short of the 60 votes that were needed to move forward. The number of yes votes or aye votes was especially low because 5 Republicans are quarantined over coronavirus fears. Now, we know Senator Lindsey Graham's quarantined, okay? And there's a few others, Senator Lindsey Graham, Senator Mitt Romney, Senator Rand Paul, Senator Mike Lee from Utah is one other one. I'm not sure who the other one is. So ever since Senate Majority Leader Moscow Mitch McConnell introduced the legislation Thursday night, senators have missed one self-imposed deadline after another to reach a deal. The vote Sunday evening was delayed 3 hours so talks could continue after it became clear it would fail. But no resolution was reached and it failed anyway. So we'll post this article here on Facebook and on YouTube. Check this out. Also, check out the reporting at NBCnews.com, because a lot of the articles for Washington Post, you have to have a subscription to the Washington Post to read them. I subscribe to the Washington Post and New York Times, so I can read them, but some of them you're limited on how many articles you can read in a month. NBCnews.com is unlimited. Okay, so you hear me giving you information from New York Times, Washington Post, NBC News, and other sources as well. So Nancy Pelosi says Democrats are going to forge ahead. Coronavirus stimulus bill fails to move forward. McConnell cites obstruction. Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat from California, told reporters that, quote, "From my standpoint, we are apart," and quote, "talks are continuing." But Democrats are going to, it was reported late today, Democrats are going to come up with their own bill in the House of Representatives. So look out for that. Okay. All right. So let's continue. I want to give you some more updates here, because what's taking place is now, when I get into this information from the Washington Post and New York Times dealing with how the Trump administration, specifically Donald Trump, ignored the warning signs coming from the intelligence community in January and February. you're going to see that basically all of the overwhelming majority of this, if not all of it, and I think basically all of it, was avoidable. What I mean by that is it would have been basically on the level of, maybe a bad flu season. You wouldn't have governors having to shut down non-essential businesses. That wouldn't be taking place right now. Okay, that wouldn't be taking place because a lot of people learned the lesson of the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, but Donald Trump hasn't. So this is an example of what happens when you have someone incompetent running the White House. So a lot of people are realizing because, you had primaries that took place for the Democratic presidential candidates. And we see Joe Biden's in the lead and Senator Bernie Sanders is contemplating what to do next. Okay. People are realizing what happens when you don't have competent leadership. People are understanding what happens when you have a president that's responsible for 330 million people and doesn't want to take responsibility for anything going wrong and wants to blame his predecessor for everything. But then try to take credit for things that President Obama did that were right, but then try to blame President Obama for things that are happening that are going wrong under the Trump administration. Takes no responsibility for anything. So in Germany, Chancellor Angela Merkel has been placed under quarantine after a doctor who administered a vaccine to her on Friday tested positive for the novel coronavirus. We see in the state of Ohio and Louisiana, Governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, and Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards on Sunday, March 22nd, became the latest state leaders to announce statewide stay-at-home orders, which take effect Monday night. Ohio's order lasts until April 6th, while Louisiana's extends until April 12th. We see the one for state of New York goes into place as well. They call it a shelter in. New York, now we see New York State's death toll has reached 114, surpassing the state of Washington's death toll and accounting for a third of all U.S. deaths. Italy reported 651 new deaths and saw the lowest percentage increase in cases since the outbreak began. Spain will extend its nationwide lockdown for 15 days, while the British government would tell 1.5 million people with serious health problems to self-quarantine for the next 12 weeks. Self-quarantine for the next 12 weeks in Britain. North Korea said Trump offered to help in the fight against coronavirus, while Lebanon called in the army to keep people indoors. We saw opera singer Placido Domingo tested positive. Now people are asking, well, wait a second, how can Trump offer help to North Korea, but you got doctors right here in the US who say they can't get tests for patients who have symptoms? You have healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, crying out for N95 masks, crying out for gloves, crying out for protective gear. They're saying they can't get the protective gear. Mike Pence is saying the companies are producing the masks are on the way. They're producing hundreds of millions of masks. The healthcare professionals are saying we don't have them. So people are asking, well, wait a second, how can Trump give help to North Korea to fight coronavirus, and he can't even fight coronavirus right here in his country? You remember Arsenio Hall, things that make you go, you remember that? you sit back and you look at this and say, wait a second, hold on. You got businesses shutting down. You got unemployment, 2.2 million people filed for unemployment. Then Politico had a big article dealing with unemployment. I'll try to find it for you because I talked about it on my broadcast this past week. They're on YouTube, they're on Facebook. You got to go watch those because I get deep into this. One out of 8 people One out of eight people who voted for Trump live in counties that don't have an ICU unit. 1 out of 8 people who voted for Donald Trump live in counties that don't have an ICU unit. So Washington Post had this article, because what's going to happen is, what we're starting to see is a lot of the hospitals are starting to be overran with people who have coronavirus and have to be hospitalized, and it's going to get worse. Well, you're going to need ICU units. Well, where hospitals are in counties, and the counties that get hospitals shut down, a lot of that has to do with government. A lot of that has to do with elected officials. Let's look at this article here from Washington Post. Analysis: 1 in 8 Trump voters lives in a county with no ICU beds. This is by Philip Bump, March 20th, 2020. A central question, as the number of confirmed cases of the novel coronavirus continues to climb, is whether hospitals will be able to handle the sudden surge in patients. Estimates suggest at least a tenth of those who are infected with the virus and who develop COVID-19, the disease associated with the virus, will need hospitalization. Many will require intensive care, straining hospital systems already dealing with the tail end of flu season. This is the motivation behind flattening the curve, encouraging people to limit transmission of the virus to keep hospital systems from being overwhelmed. That calculus assumes there are hospital systems to overwhelm. New analysis from Kaiser Health News, published Friday, that would have been March 19th, March 19th or 20th, March 20th. New analysis from Kaiser Health News, published Friday, March 20th, 2020, suggests there are millions of Americans who live in counties where there may be no intensive care unit beds at all. Many live in counties where there are not even hospitals. The presence of a hospital and of intensive care units correlates to how rural the county is. Let me repeat this. The presence of a hospital and of intensive care units correlates to how rural the county is, as you might expect. But that also means there is a remarkable bit of overlap with politics, given how central the rural vote was to Donald Trump's election in 2016. Comparing the county level data from Kaiser Health News to 2016 presidential election data, we discovered a remarkable bit of data. About 8.3 million people who voted for Trump in 2016 live in counties where there are no ICU beds or no hospitals. About 8.3 million people who voted for Donald Trump in 2016 live in counties where there are no ICU beds or no hospitals. That amounts to about 13% of the total votes Trump earned in that election, or 1 out of every 8 votes. Now, at the same time, Trump's Department of Justice is in court right now trying to repeal the entire Affordable Health Care Act and take away health care from 20 million people. That's going on right now. The U.S. Supreme Court is taking up the case. It's going to happen after the November 2020 elections. They're trying to repeal the entire Affordable Health Care Act and kick 20 million people off of health care, most of them white. We know the Affordable Health Care Act gave 3 million non-elderly African Americans health care who did not really have health care. It made a big difference for a lot of African Americans. Extended the life expectancy to the longest life expectancy in history of African Americans, about 2015, I think it was, to 72 years on average. Read the document at whitehouse.gov called Progress of the African American Community under the Obama administration. Progress of the African American Community under the Obama administration, because it shows you directly how the policies of President Obama positively impacted African Americans. And most of these policies are under attack by Trump if they have not already been reversed by Trump or weakened. So you remember if you take a look at what's going on, about 2.2 million people filed for unemployment. A lot of businesses shut down, stock market crashing. Stock market over the past 2 weeks lost over $11 trillion worth of value. Are you tired of winning yet? You remember when Donald Trump was running, he said, we're going to have so many wins, you're going to get tired of winning. You got General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler shut down. You got hair salons shut down. Oh, my God. Okay, I'm not going to talk about that. But I mean, 2 weeks from now, sisters can't get their hair done? Are you tired of winning? You remember he said, you're going to have so many wins. You're going to say, Mr. Trump, I'm tired of winning. You tired of winning yet? I'm just curious. You looked at your 401k this past 2 weeks? So most of the counties voted for Trump by wide margins. He won them by an average of 41 points. He won 10 times as many counties with no ICU beds as Hillary Clinton. More importantly, those counties which voted for Trump are home to about 6.5 million people over the age of 60. Well, people 60 and up, CDC is telling them stay home. CDC, BusinessInsider.com had the article. It's on CDC's website, Center for Disease Control. People 60 and up, the CDC is telling them stay home. Just come out to get your groceries and get your medicine. Stay home because you are vulnerable. More importantly, those counties which voted for Trump are home to about 6.5 million people over the age of 60, people in a particularly high-risk group for contracting COVID-19. For every person 60 or older in a county which voted for Hillary Clinton and has no ICU beds, there are 10 times as many people in that age group in counties that back Donald Trump and have no ICU beds. Given the correlation between population density and the number of confirmation and the number of confirmed coronavirus infections, it is likely the virus was spread in more rural counties at slower rates. But there are already well over 100 counties in which there are no ICU beds, intensive care units, no ICU beds, and in which coronavirus cases have been confirmed, according to data compiled by the Conference of State Bank Supervisors. Read the rest of this article here from this very, very interesting analysis here from the Washington Post, Philip Bump at the Washington Post. 1 in 8 Trump voters lives in a county with no ICU beds. So when Donald Trump talked about making America great again, you have to ask the question, what was he talking about? Talking about taking away health care? I mean, what was he talking about? Shutting down the global pandemic team for the National Security Council? Shutting down the pandemic team called Predict that operated under President Barack Obama and George W. Bush? When he said make America great again, was he talking about the stock market losing $11 trillion in value in two weeks? So you have to sit back and just, ask the question. Now, a lot of people think this is chickens coming home to roost. That's something else right there. Okay. Now, I warned people in 2016 about Trump. People ain't want to listen to me. I was here every week on the radio station, warning people, breaking down what was taking place. People ain't want to listen to me. I said, okay. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to line 1. Let's go. Is this Olaf? Line 1. Welcome. All right. Thanks for holding. Welcome to the African History Network show. Olaf, tell us where you're calling from.
I'm from Brightmoor, Detroit.
Brightmoor, Detroit. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for my call, Mr. Imhotep.
Yes, sir.
Brother, I just got on to you about 10 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
That bill that they passed for the relief, that's a bad bill, man. That's a terrible bill. Because look,
which bill are you talking about? There's a bill that's being debated right now that has not passed. It's being debated in the Senate. It's a $1.8 trillion bill. There was a bill that passed last week that was a $100 billion bill, and that one was like funding the fight against coronavirus. But that's not giving aid to like businesses, small businesses. That's not the stimulus bill. The one that passed last week is not the stimulus bill. The one that's being debated right now in the Senate is the stimulus bill.
Okay, my bad. I thought they already passed this. When I read into that bill, they're talking about now then, because they say you make between 75 to 99,000. You get you think 75,000 under.
Right.
You get
$1,200.
Right, but what they're saying, if you make 2,500, you may only get $300 to $600. But the more closer you get to the 75,000,
right,
you get 1,200. So the more that you make, the more you get. The less you make, the less you get.
In general, it's a bad bill. Yeah, that's why Democrats are battling Republicans on it, because they're saying it's a bad bill. Yeah, they're saying it's a
real bad bill.
Yep.
I don't understand it now. The $500 per child, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
$1,200 per couple, which would be about $2,400. I get that. But for a single dude like me, I make about $42,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I would probably average out about maybe $800-900 for my calculation. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I just think it's a bad bill.
It is.
You know what I'm saying?
It is.
Yeah. This guy is dangerous. And like you said, elections have consequences. This is a dangerous man. We thought this man was bad.
Mm-hmm.
He's really showing us how bad he is. He had a chance to stop this 2 months ago.
Right.
He could have had a lockdown. Everybody coming from China, everybody, but you know what? What amazes me is that he didn't mind doing a ban on SO countries.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't mind doing a ban from Muslim countries. But why did you have a ban from European countries, which you knew it was going on over there in Europe and Italy?
Well, that came later. That came later. That came after China. After banning people coming from China, that came later. But the thing is, there were. I'm going to get into this in a few minutes when we come back from the break. There were warning signs in January and February that he ignored. There were warning signs in January and February coming from the intelligence community that he ignored. He downplayed it. He didn't think it was a big crisis. No, but the overwhelming majority of this that's taking place, if not all of it, was avoidable. And this is what happens when you have somebody who doesn't understand history, because if you understood the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918, you would see this coming and you would understand how not to let this happen again. There were 675,000 people who died in the U.S. in 1918, 1919. 675,000 people died from that right here in the U.S. Okay? Including his grandfather, but that was before people started traveling by plane. 675,000 people died then before people started traveling by plane, before a lot of people had cars. Okay, all right, we're coming up on the break, man. We got to run, but keep listening, okay, Olaf? All right.
Yes, sir. Thank you, bro.
All right, no problem. Okay, everybody stand by. When we come back from the break, we'll go back to the phone lines. We'll go to Theo line, holding on line 2. When we come back, call-in number, area code 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number. It also will deal with U.S. intelligence reports from January and February 2020 warned about a likely pandemic. And then also it came out this week that the outgoing Obama administration ran drills with the incoming Trump administration. Obama officials walked Trump aides through global pandemic exercise in 2017. The problem was 66% of the people who were part of the Trump administration that went through these exercises, they're not in the administration anymore. 9:10 a.m. the Superstation of Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep, the African History Network show. We'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, guys, stand by. Those on YouTube, how's everybody doing? Stand by. Everybody share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. Okay. We're having problems on Facebook. The signal was weak in here. I don't know what's going on. So everybody share this broadcast. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's staying safe. You can donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show, or also through Cash App, $the AHN show through Cash App, $the AHN show through Cash App. So we'll be back in a couple minutes. You can give us a call. Calling numbers area code 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the calling number. If you have a question or comment. All right, then we're going to talk about the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. And then also the last segment of the show, we'll deal with Madam C.J. Walker, the Netflix special on Madam C.J. Walker. We'll talk some about that. Have you all seen it? If you've seen it, you can give us a call when we get to that segment and talk about it.
Like the name, can I get the name? Nope, not figure which one.
All right. Okay, stand by, everybody. We're back in a couple of minutes. We got Johnny. Well, which woke posters are you talking about, Johnny? If you want to talk about reparations, explain to me how do you get reparations passed in the U.S. Senate? Well, Moscow Mitch McConnell has already told you that reparations is dead on arrival in the Senate. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, March 22nd, 2020. We are live. You can give us a call. Area code 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. 313-778-7600. We'll go back to the phone lines in just a minute. Want to let you all know, some of you all saw my Facebook post today. Dr. Layla Africa, who was a brilliant holistic practitioner. A lot of people have seen his videos on YouTube, saw him in Hidden Colors documentaries. He made his transition on Saturday, March 21st, okay? I got a confirmation. I talked to King Simon today in New York, and King Simon gave me a confirmation on that. He was a student of Dr. Layla Africa. I knew Dr. Layla Africa. I hadn't talked to him. I think last time I saw him was probably I think maybe 2 years ago. Was the last time I saw him. We did a lecture together back in, I think it was 2014 in St. Louis, okay? It's a study group down in St. Louis that brought us in to do a lecture together, and met Dr. Layla Africa, met his wife, Dr. Melanie, and I interviewed him as well once or twice also. So we have the interview podcasted at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on listen to podcasts. But he made his transition. He passed away in his sleep. Dr. Melanie has if you go to my Facebook fan page, the African History Network, and my personal page, Michael Imhotep, there's a video of his wife, Dr. Melanie, talking about confirming his passing, etc., dispelling conspiracy theories, that nonsense that starts circulating as soon as someone prominent passes away. Okay. So, thoughts and prayers go out to the family. You hear more about it. We'll post updates on our Facebook fan page. They also have updates on their website, LailaAfrica.com. Let me give it to you. That's LailaAfrika, LailaAfrica.com. But we have it. That's their official website. So they have updates there. All this products, books, that's still there. You can still purchase those there from their official website. Let's see here, and it's on YouTube. Okay, let me get this. Those watching on YouTube, we'll post the link here on the thread of the broadcast on YouTube. But we have it on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network on YouTube. It's at the YouTube channel. Laila Africa, LLAILA, Laila Africa, on YouTube. Okay, so people can check that out as well. All right. Let's see. Let's go back to the phone lines here. Let's go to John, line 1. John, welcome to the African History Network show. Thanks for holding. Tell us where you're calling from.
This is from Los Angeles. I'm trying to watch it and listen to you at the same time. This is Johnny from Los Angeles.
Okay, listen through the telephone though, man, because listen through the telephone.
Okay, yeah, because it's confusing me. I think you responded to something about reparations.
Mm-hmm.
That was not my point.
Oh, okay. I was reading. Oh, okay. You posted on YouTube. I was reading your post on YouTube. Maybe you were responding to somebody else or something. Maybe that's what it was.
My response was that was a lady saying that she's not going to vote. Her only issue was the reparations, and what my comment was, there's a lot of issues pertaining to black people besides reparations.
Oh yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of misinformation out there from these so-called black wannabe video people telling people not to vote.
Right.
And to me, a no vote is a vote for Trump or anything worse.
That's true.
I think we have to vote from intelligence, research, and knowledge rather than just from emotions.
That's true. I totally agree with that. And yeah, you were responding to somebody else. Okay, so yeah. Now that you explained that, your post makes sense. I'm glad you called in. Yeah, you're correct about that. There are a whole lot of issues pertaining to African Americans. Everything from healthcare to funding for education to criminal justice reform, climate change. All of this impacts African Americans. We see what's going on. We see what's going on right now with the economy tanking and African American businesses being closed. Now, what people have to understand is that if you want to talk about reparations, one, it'll help your argument to talk about making legal arguments for reparations, because a lot of these arguments for reparations are not legal arguments for reparations, and it won't hold up when you're trying to talk to lawmakers, and laws have to be, and the foundation of laws is the U.S. Constitution. So nobody is focused on what happens if, by the grace of God, reparations actually passes the House of Representatives and the Senate, and the president signs into the law, how to defend it, how to protect it when it's challenged in the courts. And Trump has nominated 1/4 of the federal judges.
Right.
Because through December 2019, Republicans got 191 federal judges confirmed. That's 1/4 of the federal judges, which is a lifetime appointment. So a lot of people who are just focused on one issue don't understand how all these other things impact the lives of African Americans.
Absolutely. You know, I said I didn't want to insult anybody, but we need to. I said the mind is a terrible thing to waste. You're coming from a knowledgeable perspective, you know, and hopefully I'm doing the same, because education is one thing, but all this emotional crap that I'm seeing on some of these Facebook sites, can't follow that crap.
All right. Well, we're not gonna get into calling names, things like that. But I'm not saying you. I'm just saying in general. But some of these people I know. But but anyway, the thing is, we have to follow this logically and understand law. Now Senator Moscow Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, has already said reparations is dead on arrival in the U.S. Senate.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely. He already said that. And people have to understand, Republicans control the U.S. Senate. Moscow Mitch McConnell, Senate Majority Leader. No bill can come to the Senate floor for debate or a vote without his approval. So reparations is dead on arrival in the Senate as long as he's there and Republicans control the Senate.
Right, there you have it.
Which means we have to vote. We got to vote him out of office. Democrats have to take back control of the Senate. But being that you brought up reparations, people have to understand how to make legal arguments, okay? So there's a difference between a moral argument for reparations and a legal argument for reparations, because you're trying to get lawmakers to pass a law.
Absolutely.
They're not just going to cut a check. That ain't how this works, okay? I mean, for all the people that say cut the check, you know, and the other thing is, I've said this before, if we ever get reparations, the majority of it should not be in the form of money, because if we all got $500,000 a day, white people will have it all back this time next week. The only thing you would have done is stimulated the economy. That's the only thing you would have done. It would not bring about the transformational change, the structural change we need to see in the African American community. So we have to be very clear on this. So people need to read the U.S. Constitution. Go to lc.gov, Library of Congress website. Go to archives.gov, National Archives. Read the U.S. Constitution. Go to Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution. I'm doing a broadcast probably Monday dealing with this, because March 2nd, 1807, the U.S. Congress abolished the international transatlantic slave trade. A lot of people don't know this because we don't understand history. If you want to do reparations, you got to understand two things: history and law. And you have to understand how to make a legal argument based upon the historical foundation. Okay, so the U.S. Congress abolished the international transatlantic slave trade. That went into effect January 1st, 1808. The reason why they abolished it is because it's stipulated in Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution that the earliest that the international transatlantic slave trade could be abolished was 1808. Now, when we talk about the international transatlantic slave trade, we're talking about Africans being brought to this country and enslaved, okay? That was abolished because at the Philadelphia Convention in 1787, the 13 colonies are debating about abolishing the international transatlantic slave trade, and all of the colonies agreed to it except one, which was South Carolina. Now, by 1787, 5 states had already abolished slavery. The first state to abolish slavery was Vermont, July 2nd, 1777. You had Pennsylvania, you had Connecticut, you had Massachusetts. Okay, so some states had already abolished slavery, either in total or partly, meaning the importation of Africans. But since South Carolina was the lone holdout at the Philadelphia Convention, they decided to table that argument for 20 years. And the earliest that the importation of Africans could be abolished was 1808. So that law passed, that bill passed Congress March 2nd, 1807. It went into effect January 1st, 1808, which means from January 1st, 1808 to about June of 1860, when the Clotilda comes into Alabama, all those Africans brought to this country, it was illegal based upon the U.S. government's own laws. That means Europeans violated their own laws. There are court cases of white men being prosecuted because there were U.S. naval ships that were out on the seas looking for slave ships coming to this country because they were contraband. It was illegal.
Well, I never knew that.
Oh yeah, that's history. That's why we got to understand history law. But it's based upon law. It's based upon the U.S. Constitution. So when we make these arguments, so the argument we should look at is all those Africans, because prior to that, it's all legal. Prior to that, it's wrong, but it's all legal prior to January 1st, 1808. But now you can make legal arguments because you're talking to lawmakers. You don't go to lawmakers arguing morality. You go to lawmakers arguing law. Okay, so and then also the second real strong legal argument, which is maybe even a stronger one, is the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866. because the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866, that's law still on the books right now. Many of our ancestors were in those treaties and got land, got compensation, got benefits from the 5 civilized tribes of Native Americans, the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians. This is how a lot of the early Black landowners in Tulsa, Oklahoma got land, which became Black Wall Street.
Okay.
Because Tulsa, Oklahoma was founded by Creek Indians around 1836, who got pushed off their land in southeastern United States because of the Indian Removal Act of 1830, signed by President Andrew Jackson. And then the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians all go out over 1,000 miles on the Trail of Tears. They all go into Oklahoma, and they take their Black slaves with them because they all own Black slaves.
Right.
Yeah. So when you study somebody like Sarah Rector, who was known as the richest Afro-American girl in the country, she was a millionaire, and she was her family was of enslaved Creek ancestry. Her family were like former slaves of the Creek Indians, where they get land from those Indian treaties. Oil is discovered on her land. She becomes a millionaire. She was so rich. She was called Afro-American, number one. Okay, they called her Afro-American. She was so rich, white people wanted to classify her as white, like they did some Indians. She was so rich, white people wanted to classify her as white. Her name is Sarah Rector, R-E-C-T-O-R. Okay, John, keep listening.
Okay, can I say one more?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Then we gotta go to Theo. Go ahead.
Sure. Is there first of all, thank you so much, because your podcast is informative and just, I'm excited about it, because a lot of those, I'm not going to criticize it, just a bunch of propaganda. But anyway, is there some books or links that I can go for to find out some of these things that you mentioned? Because I'm sure, I know you can't just stay on my call, but I like to know that there's a link or a book I can read to get them this knowledge, because that's fascinating.
With Black Wall Street, I have lectures I've done dealing with the history of Black Wall Street. We have lectures on my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. The book by Hannibal B. Johnson, dealing with Black Wall Street and the resurrection of Black Wall Street, is one of the best books dealing with the history of Black Wall Street. Sarah Rector, you can go to blackpast.org, blackpast.org. And you can read about Sarah Rector, R-E-C-T-O-R. I have lectures, I have podcasts that I've done, videos on YouTube, things like that. You can, Dr. Claude Anderson, you can read, Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth. The information is there. And then also I interviewed Dr. Jahi Issa and Brother Reggie Marbury back in, 2018? I interviewed them. They wrote an article for blackagendareport.org called, it was something like Reparations is Dead, Here's How to Revive It. And they're talking about legal arguments for reparations. And they break down how the international transatlantic slave trade was abolished. And they break down court cases of white men who were caught involved in the slave trade in this country, like importing Africans. It was still legal to sell them. It was still legal to have plantations. It was still legal to auction them off in this country. But the importation of Africans as slaves, that was made illegal. Okay, but there are court cases of white men who were caught engaging in the importation of Africans, and they were prosecuted. All right, so you can check out that article from blackagendareport.com also.
Okay, well, you have a new follower here, and the next time I do a concert, I'll mention some things about that.
Okay, all right, thanks. I appreciate it, John.
Thanks for taking my call.
No problem. All right, let's go to Theo, line 2. Hey, Theo, welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from. Theo, are you there? Take the phone off mute. Theo, line 2, are you there? Okay. Okay, let's go to Steve. Let's go to line 3. Let's go to line 3. Welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from.
Mike, how you doing?
All right, how's it going, man?
What lying to the people?
Lying about what?
Trump ain't doing all that to these people.
Not doing what?
You're lying to the people. I believe Trump over you.
Not doing what?
Said no one. I'm just being facetious. I'm saying that all these dummies out here, all these the bottom line is, I think the man should be charged for murder. Because he held out on us.
Right.
He said it was a hoax. Am I right, Mike?
Yep. February 28th, 2020, at his rally in South Carolina. And in South Carolina, he said it's the Democrats' new hoax. He said it's the Democrats' new hoax. Yes. Go ahead.
I'll wait for you to do the story. Maybe you already did it, maybe you listened.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, there's a country
Mm-hmm.
that has a drug that's progressive towards coronavirus. They have a drug that can stop 75% of all diabetic amputees. And they have a drug that can solve some of the mystery of lung cancer.
Mm-hmm.
You know what that country is?
Is that Cuba?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So when you sit back and you know that these people have some type of cure for your own people, does that mean you really care about your country?
Right.
Did not black people, did not Obama want to do business with Cuba, and who came back and put the sanctions back on?
Put the sanctions on, yeah, because President Obama lifted sanctions, and there was some limited travel going back and forth to Cuba, things like this. Yeah, that was after, if I remember correctly, that was after Fidel Castro passed away, and his brother Raul took over. I think his brother Raul took over before he passed away. I can't remember, but I think that was after Fidel Castro passed away. But yeah, he did that, and then the Trump administration came in and clamped down on that. Yeah.
All of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, they're sitting, and this will show you how black people, this is all for our people, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
The sheep. Did not Fidel Castro. I hear Negroes talking against him.
Mm-hmm.
Fidel Castro said, hey, black Americans, they won't let you be doctors. Come to Cuba.
That's true.
Be doctors.
That's true. He was training them. They were giving free training for doctors. Yep, that's true. That's true.
Is it not in Cuba, whether you want to dog them out or not, you can get a PhD degree for free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and saying that when people make the argument, they're not saying, when people make the argument about the healthcare, things like that, they're not saying things are perfect in Cuba, but it's like, these were things that were taking place. Yes.
But Mike, wouldn't things be better in Cuba if they allow the sanctions to come in and we can use some of the drugs that they have as infants to help cure our people? That will give them, I mean, these Negroes,
Mm-hmm.
these fake patriots say they love capitalism, am I right?
Yeah, usually, yeah.
So if we can do business with Cuba, we can stop 75% of all diabetic amputation. We
Mm-hmm.
can help cure some of the cases of lung cancer. We can help counteract the coronavirus. It's sitting there, but because of a stupid embargo,
Mm-hmm.
we do more business with Russia, we won't do business with Cuba.
Right. Man, that's ridiculous. Hey, hold the line, man. We're coming up on a break, Steve. Hold the line. I'll hold you over. 9:10 a.m. the Superstation and Future Radio. Michael Imhotep, the African History Network show. We'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, stand by, everybody. Can you all hear me on YouTube? Somebody was saying there's a problem with the audio. Can you all hear me on YouTube?
9:10 a.m.
My let's see here. All right, how's everybody on Facebook? We're gonna try this again. It's acting up. I was trying to broadcast here from my phone. We're here in the studio. We're on commercial break. We'll be back in a couple minutes. So when we come back, we're giving an update on coronavirus. When we come back, we will deal with how Trump missed the early warning signs about coronavirus. We have to talk about that. It's very serious. Everybody share this broadcast. What are we doing on YouTube? Okay, you can barely hear the callers. We got to move the... Okay. Just a second here. Got to put another speaker here near the phone. All right. John, wait. All right. And then also, everybody, y'all can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App. or through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. That helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting. We're about to come back here.
15 seconds.
About to come back from the break. Okay, Theo, call back in.
Yep.
All right.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, March 22nd, 2020. Hope everybody's doing well. We're battling the coronavirus. We're battling in various states, non-essential businesses being shut down also. So we're going to, in a few minutes here, I'm going to talk about how some of the early warning signs were ignored by the Trump administration and Donald Trump dealing with coronavirus. Okay, if you'd like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me, the AHN show, through PayPal, and also $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App. Let's go back to the phone lines. Let's go to Theo, line 1. Theo, call back in. Okay, Theo, can you hear me? Okay, all right, Theo. Let everybody know where you're calling from. Which city? Okay, Hood Research in Detroit. Go ahead, Theo. Thanks for calling back in. Thanks for calling. Go ahead.
I was calling because I find it interesting that Congress is debating over $1.8 trillion,
Mm-hmm.
2 trillion, 3. They've even mentioned 4 trillion. But yet when you talk about reparations, all of a sudden they don't have any money.
Well, a lot of times the argument isn't we don't have any money. A lot of times the argument against reparations is they don't feel that a debt is owed. Depends upon who you talk to. A lot of times the argument against reparations is not necessarily we don't have the money. It's an argument of that was a long time ago and they don't feel that a debt is owed. See, what people, I speak all across the country, and a lot of people are totally ignorant of history. And white people and African Americans are totally ignorant of history. So if we're ever going to get reparations, we have not only do we have to understand how to make legal arguments, but America needs a massive history lesson. Because there are a lot of people who are in denial. There are a lot of people in Congress who are in denial about the history of slavery and really how this country was built, okay? And when you don't have African-American history that's taught in schools, then and if their parents don't understand the history, then the people grow up and matriculate throughout life and not really understand this. Okay, so because reparations is not a handout, it's dealing with repairing the damage that was done. But if you don't understand the damage that was done, you think that people are just just asking for a handout. You would say, well, they have welfare, so why do they need reparations? It's like people arguing over Confederate monuments, and people arguing trying to preserve Confederate monuments. So when we look at, for instance, in Charlottesville, Virginia, in August of, I think it was 2017, okay, the Unite the Right rally. All right, so you had 12 white supremacist organizations uniting, and they said they were trying to save a statue dedicated to General Robert E. Lee. Well, when you study General Robert E. Lee was against Confederate statues, even Confederate statues and monuments honoring him. Because when the Civil War ended, even though General Robert E. Lee was a brutal slave owner, he said that all the Confederate battle flags need to be put away. He said that there need to be a time of healing between the North, the Union, and the South, the Confederacy. So he was against Confederate monuments. He was against Confederate statues. When you look at a lot of those white supremacist organizations that were there in Charlottesville, Virginia, a lot of them had the Confederate battle flag or variations of it. Well, what people think is the Confederate flag the flag that's on the General Lee car on the Dukes of Hazzard, and the car is named after General Robert E. Lee, a slave owner.
Right.
And we just sat up there week after week watching Bo and Luke Duke climb in and out the car, and we realized it was named after a slave owner, Robert E. Lee, who committed treason against the Union, took up arms against the Union, led Virginia in the fight against the North. But the flag that's on the car, that's not the Confederate flag. That's the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia under General Robert E. Lee's army. There were 3 flags that flew over the Confederate States of America, the CSA, from 1861 to 1865. That flag was never one of them. That's not the Confederate flag. But a lot of white supremacists, because they don't understand history, think it's the Confederate flag. No, it's not.
And then on the other side, African Americans made to be ashamed of Africans with the Tarzan movies and
Right.
buckwheat and all the stereotypes, negative characters in the entertainment field. And they fight against, those of us in the community who are more conscious and more concerned about our history.
Right.
And the country, and the continent that our ancestors are from. But I have a question.
Go ahead.
Have you come across any statistics about what's going on at the southern border? Now, at the northern border, we have almost 7,000 Canadians that come over here every day to work. Okay. And of course, when they go back across the Detroit River, they've got to pay of the exchange amount of money. But we don't hear any conversation about the coronavirus in Canada. But they're coming back and forth over here. And on the southern border, the president is not closing either one. So on the southern border.
Well, he's closed both borders. No. Trump has closed the southern border and the northern border I think it's restricted. I think there are a few exceptions, but they did it this past week. They did it to the northern border, the Canadian border that goes all across North America, and they did it to the border to Mexico. But there are a few exceptions, but people going back and forth to do commerce, go to restaurants, all that's been shut down.
Right, but if they work here, they can still earn money here and take it back to their country. But is there any spread of the virus among the Mexicans? Since he hates them so much. Are you saying, are there any cases in Mexico? No, along the border. They have children in cages.
Oh, you mean spreading in the detention, in the camps, in the detention centers? I'm not sure. I know like at Rikers Island, there are cases. So I would bet money there are probably some cases in those detention centers. And that's one of the concerns. That's something Reverend Al Sharpton brought up this past week, dealing with prisons and dealing with migrants in those detention centers. Yes.
Right. They don't want that information to get out about the detention.
Right. Okay.
That's what I wanted to ask.
Okay. All right. Thanks for calling. Okay. Let's go back to Steve, line 3. I think he had one last comment. Okay, Steve. I think you had one last comment. You wrapping up your thoughts right before the break?
Yeah, I'm just saying, anybody, especially from my community, that don't vote, you're just an idiot. Because they're going across this country suppressing your vote. They spend a whole bunch of time and money to suppress your vote. That means your vote must really count. And the lower the turnout, the easier it is for them to cheat.
That's true.
And Mike, if you got a party that don't like blacks, don't like Mexicans, don't like Arabs, don't like gays, don't like poor whites, who's left to vote for them? They have to cheat.
Well, Republicans have a declining population. The Republican Party is not growing, it's shrinking. Okay. And if you just saw, man, just what happened with, Fox News, right? Fox News is like just this past week. Once Donald Trump, Friday the 13th, March 13th, when Donald Trump declared the coronavirus a national emergency, That's when Fox News started changing their tune.
Yeah.
And stop calling it a hoax, because you had hosts, Janine Pereiro, you had Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, you had a bunch of them who were calling it a hoax, things like this. Once he declared it a national emergency, they changed their tune, and then they started backtracking. Okay, and then saying it's serious. We need to take this seriously. No, you were telling people it was a hoax also, just like he was.
Michael, let's talk about the last point I want to make is, I want you to do a story. I'm not trying to tell you how to run the show, but
Sure.
I would love to see a story about how all these senators made money off the stock market.
Yeah, well, I dealt with that Thursday. Go follow me. You follow me on YouTube or Facebook?
No, I can.
Okay, yeah. The African History Network on Facebook, the African History Network on Facebook, and Michael Imhotep on YouTube. Because I dealt with that. I dealt with that Thursday when the story broke, like Senator Richard Burr. I'm not really going to have time. I talked about a little bit at the top of the show tonight, but I dealt with that in depth. Senator Richard Burr, who's the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Oh, yeah, that's deep.
And you see William Barr is trying to walk back the indictment for the 13 Russians.
So that's very interesting right there that you meant. Not only that, but earlier this week, Donald Trump tweeted he's considering a pardon for Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. Lieutenant General Michael Flynn was Donald Trump's national security advisor, his first national security advisor. He's had a number of his first national security advisor for about 24 days, right? If you go back to December 2015, at the 10th anniversary of Russia Today TV in Russia, Vladimir Putin is sitting at the dinner table. To his right is Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. Lieutenant General Michael Flynn ended up becoming Donald Trump's national security advisor after President Obama, who was outgoing, told Donald Trump, don't hire this guy because I had to fire him. Trump hired him anyway. Question we have to ask is, why did he hire him? This guy was sitting right next to Vladimir Putin. Now, across the table from Lieutenant General Michael Flynn and Vladimir Putin was who? You know who was sitting across the table from him?
Who?
Jill Stein.
Wow.
Who ran for president?
Wow.
Who ran for president in November 2016 and for the Green Party, and there was absolutely no chance of her winning. And instead of dropping out of the race, like Governor Bill Weld did and Governor Gary Johnson did, who were independents, like 3 weeks, like 3 weeks before, instead of dropping out, and they said we have to stop Trump. Jill Stein stayed in all the way to the end and said there was no difference between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, which was a lie. She was sitting across the table. She's at the table with Vladimir Putin and Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. So while all this stuff is going on with coronavirus, Trump tweets, he starts floating. He's considering giving a pardon to Lieutenant General Michael Flynn after Michael Flynn pleaded guilty. Michael Flynn's attorneys said he wanted to retract his guilty plea. Then you have Attorney General William Barr, who's a flunky. Who just tell the truth, he's a flunky for Donald Trump. He goes and he drops the charges against the 13 Russians, okay, dealing with the hacking of the DNC. Well, all this is going on, so it's like, well, wait a second, why are they doing this right now when people are rightfully distracted with coronavirus? Why are they trying to do this with the Russians? What's behind that?
Absolutely. And if you look at when Putin's gone after everybody, and everybody smacked them back except this president, Putin went out to Saudi Arabia. What did they do? They said, okay, we're going to lower the oil prices and starve you out. Yeah,
that was a battle. That was a battle between Saudi Arabia and Russia, and Saudi Arabia lowered the price of oil. Yep, and that was a battle between them. Yes. Yep.
And last point I'll make, I'm reading a book right now called The Dark Towers, the Deutsche Bank and Trump.
Deutsche Bank, yeah.
Deutsche Bank and Donald Trump. Have you heard that book?
Yeah, I have. Now, who wrote that one? I can't remember. So many books.
I can't think of the author's name, but it's a relatively new book, and man, if half this stuff in this book is true, this guy's complicit.
Oh, yeah.
All roads lead back to Russia.
They do. And yep, go ahead. Go ahead.
And they got some law, they must have a butt naked picture with him with a teenager or something.
Oh, I think, well, it's suspected that a lot of Russian money is flowing through his businesses. There's a lot of there've been allegations dealing with money laundering coming from Russia's buying condominiums, buying real estate, because that's one of the ways they launder money.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you remember the story that broke in Soho, New York?
Mm-hmm.
They had an empty condominium.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody lived there, but they was laundering money through the condominium, and they had to close it down.
I think so, but I also remember a property that Trump bought for about $45 million. He sold it a couple of years later for 90 to 100 million to a Russian oligarch. Yeah, I remember that too.
Yeah. So they launder money through property, and they got a town in Singapore that's called a ghost town.
Mm-hmm.
They build all these expensive high rises, but nobody lives in Singapore.
Well, I also remember when U.S. Attorney to Manhattan Preet Bharara was fired by Donald Trump, and one of the things that Preet Bharara was investigating was Deutsche Bank. And Deutsche Bank had to pay something like $600 million in fines to the U.S. government because they were caught laundering $10 billion of money from Russia. And Deutsche
According to this book, Dr. Powers, Mike,
yeah.
Deutsche Bank is bankrupt, but the Germans don't want it to come out, and they're funding Deutsche Bank, because Deutsche Bank lost 95% of its value.
Well, Deutsche Bank is the largest creditor of Donald Trump.
Yes.
Donald Trump owes them the most money. And then while we're on it, Jared Kushner owes Deutsche Bank about $285 million also. While we're on the subject, Jared Kushner, senior advisor to the president, that didn't have no experience in government, right?
Yeah.
He owes Deutsche Bank about $285 million as well.
He changed his national clearance application over 40 times. He lied 4 times on the application.
Right.
He still got a clearance.
Right.
But I can't even get a clearance.
Well, that was after the FBI did not approve his clearance. The FBI recommended he did not get a security clearance. Yes. They were overruled. Okay. All right. I got to go. Okay, Steve. Thanks for calling. Let's go to John. All right, John. Welcome to the African History Network Show. Thanks for calling. Go ahead with your question or comment.
South and all that. Yeah, I don't know what you believe, but you can look at the guy that put the Timothy. They blamed him. They called him what you call a traitor.
Who was that?
They said that people were once in that war in Pennsylvania, but they said you weren't in the war, and you said a double agent went to the South and got the people, a lot of people slaughtered, and the doctor and he never will forgive him for leading the people into a slaughter place like that.
Who are you talking about, John?
Robert E. Lee.
Oh, Robert E. Lee, General Robert E. Lee. Yeah, okay, during the Civil War. Okay.
And a lot of the Southerners, they appreciate him using them people into that slaughter in Pennsylvania. They said he knew that they won't go in that war. So I just want to say, people, the MI6, they got some sort of graphic pictures about Trump and his profile, so they keep that even show is all for. So I just want to let you come outside, and MI6 get on the case is all for.
Okay.
And basically, thank you, Octavia, but keep up your work and knowledge and power, man.
Okay.
All the time. Thank you.
All right, John, appreciate it. All right, let's see. Okay, we're pressed for time here, so let's do this. Washington Post, March 20th, 2020. U.S. intelligence reports from January and February warned about a likely pandemic. This is from the Washington Post. Also, TheHill.com has an article dealing with this as well, citing the Washington Post. The intelligence reports did not predict when the virus might land on U.S. shores or recommend particular steps that public health officials should take. issues outside the purview of the intelligence agencies. But they did track the spread of the virus in China and later in other countries and warned that Chinese officials appeared to be minimizing the severity of the outbreak. Taken together, the reports and warnings painted an early picture of a virus that showed the characteristics of a globe encircling pandemic, that could require governments to take swift actions to contain it. But despite that constant flow of reporting, Donald Trump continued publicly and privately to play down the threat the virus posed to Americans. Lawmakers, too, did not grapple with the virus in earnest until the month of March, as officials scrambled to keep citizens in their homes and hospitals braced for a surge in patients suffering from COVID-19, the disease caused by the coronavirus. Now, intelligence agencies, quote, have been warning on this since January, end quote, said a U.S. official who had access to intelligence reporting that was disseminated to members of Congress and their staffs, as well as to officials in the Trump administration, and who, along with others, spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe sensitive information. Let me repeat this. Intelligence agencies, quote, have been warning on the coronavirus since January 2020, said a U.S. official who had access to intelligence reporting that was disseminated to members of Congress and their staffs, as well as to officials in the Trump administration, and who, along with others, spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe sensitive information. Now, was one of the people briefed? Was that Mick Mulvaney, who was Donald Trump's former acting chief of staff? Was that Mick Mulvaney? Because when Mick Mulvaney was at CPAC last month, Mick Mulvaney called this, he basically referred to this as a Democrats hoax, and he said the Democrats couldn't take down Donald Trump through impeachment, so they were trying to use coronavirus to take this down. And he was downplaying coronavirus. But what happened at CPAC? Somebody at CPAC came down with coronavirus. Then Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida had to go into quarantine because he was there. And then Representative Mark Meadows, who is the incoming acting chief of staff of Donald Trump, he was there as well. He had to go into quarantine also. I think the chickens are coming home to roost. So, quote, Donald Trump may not have been expecting this, but a lot of other people in the government were. They just couldn't get him to do anything about it, end quote, this official said. The system was blinking red. Now, spokespeople for the CIA and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence declined to comment, and the White House spokesman rebutted criticism of Trump's response. Donald Trump responded to reporters' questions about the timeline of his knowledge on the coronavirus on March 21st. So they had that reporting from the Washington Post. Quote, President Trump has taken historic aggressive measures to protect the health, wealth, and safety of the American people, and did so while the media and Democrats chose to only focus on the stupid politics of a sham illegitimate impeachment. That's Hogan Gidley. Hogan Gidley is a spokesman for Trump. Hogan Gidley is an idiot. Okay, if Hogan Gidley used to be on News One Now, Roland Martin. Okay, back when he was halfway decent. Then he goes to work for the Trump administration in the public relations, whatever the department is, the press. Okay. If Hogan Gidley should just resign and save what little dignity he has. Because when you put out something like this, all the evidence is contrary to this, okay? All you got to do is watch the stock market when Donald Trump is talking. Go back to this past Friday, March 20th, and watch Donald Trump rambling on and watch the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropping. So at a White House briefing Friday, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar said officials have been alerted to the initial reports of the virus by discussions that the director of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention had with Chinese colleagues on January 3rd. January 3rd, Alex Azar is the Secretary of Health and Human Services, okay? At a White House press briefing on Friday, March 20th, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar said officials have been alerted to the initial reports of the virus by discussions that the director of the CDC and prevention had with Chinese colleagues on January 3rd. He's confirming this. January 3rd. It was February 28th when Donald Trump was in South Carolina calling this the Democrats' new hoax. And Alex Azar and others were briefed January 3rd on coronavirus. The warnings from U.S. intelligence agencies increased in volume toward the end of January and into early February, said officials familiar with the reports. By then, a majority of the intelligence reporting included in daily briefing papers and digests from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and the CIA was about COVID-19, said officials who have read the reports. So the reports exist. They're documenting. No, they were briefed on all this. The surge in warnings coincide with a move by Senator Richard Burr to sell dozens of stocks worth between $628,000 and $1.72 million. On February 13th, no, you got to understand the sequence of this. February 13th, 2020, Senator Richard Burr, who's the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, he gets information that other senators don't get. He made 33 stock trades in one day. Does he have a full-time job as a stock trader? He made 33 stock trades in one day. Guess what? They were all sales. So the surge in warnings coincided with a move by Senator Richard Burr, Republican of North Carolina, to sell dozens of stocks worth between $628,000 and $1.27 million. As chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator Richard Burr was privy to virtually all of the highly classified reporting on the coronavirus. Senator Richard Burr issued a statement on Friday, March 20th, defending his sell-off, saying he sold based entirely on public available information, and he called for the Senate Ethics Committee to investigate. A key task for analysts during disease outbreaks is to determine whether foreign officials are trying to minimize the effects of an outbreak or take steps to hide a public health crisis, according to current and former officials familiar with the process. At the State Department, personnel have been nervously tracking early reports about the virus. One official noted that it was discussed at a meeting in the third week of January, around the time that cable traffic showed that U.S. diplomats in Wuhan, China, were being brought home on chartered planes, a sign that the public health risk was significant. That's the third week in January. February 28th, Trump is calling it a Democratic hoax. Trump is talking to his own followers in South Carolina, calling it a Democratic hoax. February 28th. 2 weeks later, he declares it a national emergency. What happened between hoax and national emergency? What happened? I just want to know. I study this day by day. What happened between the Democrats' new hoax, February 28th, and national emergency, Friday the 13th, March 13th? A colleague at the White House mentioned how concerned he was about the transmissibility of the virus. The official said in January, there was obviously a lot of chatter. Now, inside the White House, Donald Trump's advisors struggled to get him to take the virus seriously, according to multiple officials with knowledge of meetings among those advisors and with the president. Secretary of Health and Human Services Alex Azar could not get through to Trump to speak with him about the virus until January 8th, 2020, according to two senior administration officials. Now, if you've been watching MSNBC, over a week ago, Ken Delanian reported on this because I watched the interviews with Ken Delanian. He reported on this, how Secretary of Health and Human Services Alex Azar was trying to get meetings with Trump in January to warn Trump about this, and he couldn't get the meeting set up. Secretary of Health and Human Services Alex Azar could not get through to Trump to speak with him about the virus until January 18, 2020, according to two senior administration officials. When he reached Trump by phone, the president interjected to ask about vaping and when flavored vaping products would be back on the market, the senior administration official said. Now, on January 27, 2020, White House aides huddled with then acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney in his office, who was at CPAC, saying basically this was Democrats' new hoax and they were trying to use coronavirus to take down Trump and downplaying coronavirus. That's Mick Mulvaney, who now has been banished to be the ambassador to Ireland. On January 27th, White House aides huddled with then acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney in his office, trying to get senior officials to pay more attention to the virus, according to people briefed on the meeting. Joe Grogan, Grogan, the head of the White House Domestic Policy Council, argued that the administration needed to take the virus seriously or it could cost the president his re-election, and that dealing with the virus was likely to dominate life in the United States for many months. Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, who's been banished to Ireland, then began convening more regular meetings. In early briefings, however, officials said Trump was dismissive because he did not believe that the virus had spread widely throughout the United States. By early February 2020, Joe Rogan, the head of the White House Domestic Policy Council, then began convening more regular meetings. In early briefings, by early February, Joe Rogan and others worried that there were not enough tests to determine the rate of infection, according to people who spoke directly to Joe Rogan. This is in early February. They're worried about a lack of tests, coronavirus tests, and you can't use a flu test to determine coronavirus. You can use a flu test to determine the person doesn't have the flu. Maybe they have coronavirus. Other officials, including Matthew Pottinger, the president's deputy national security advisor, began calling for a more forceful response, according to people briefed on White House meetings. But Donald Trump resisted and continued to assure Americans that the coronavirus would never run rapid as it had in other countries. Donald Trump said, "I think it's going to work out fine." He said on February 19, 2020, I think when we get into April, in the warmer weather, that has a very negative effect on that and that type of virus. Now, Donald Trump tweeted 5 days later, he tweeted 5 days later, the coronavirus is very much under control in the US. Stock market starting to look very good to me. But earlier that month, February, a senior official in the Department of Health and Human Services delivered a starkly different message to the Senate Intelligence Committee. In a classified briefing that 4 U.S. officials said covered the coronavirus and its global health implications. Robert Kadlec, Kadlec, the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, who was joined by intelligence officials, including from the CIA, told committee members that the virus posed a quote unquote serious threat, one of those officials said. Now, Kadlec did not provide specific recommendations, but he said that to go ahead, he said that to get ahead of the virus and blunt its effects, Americans would need to take actions that could disrupt their daily lives, the official said. Quote unquote, it was very alarming. Let me know how much time we have. Trump's insistence, on the contrary, seemed to rest in his relationship with China's President Xi, whom Trump believed was providing him with reliable information about how the virus was spreading in China, despite reports from intelligence agencies that Chinese officials were not being candid about the true scale of the crisis. So read the rest of this article. I don't have time to get through the rest of it. This is reported March 20th, 2020, New York, Washington Post. U.S. intelligence reports from January and February warn about likely pandemic, okay? Then we see the there was an article from New York Times. We try to get that one in also. Before, yeah, this one right here from New York Times. This came out March 19th. This came out the day before. Before virus outbreak, a cascade of warnings went unheeded. This is more evidence on warnings that the Trump administration got and Donald Trump. The majority of this was avoidable, if not all of it. Then we look at the Hill.com. This is from March 17, 2020. Obama officials walked Trump aides through global pandemic exercise in 2017. The Obama administration walked incoming Trump administration officials through a hypothetical scenario in which a pandemic worse than the 1918 Spanish flu shut down cities like Seoul, Korea, and London, England in early 2017. Politico.com reported. During the briefing, Trump administration officials were told such a pandemic would likely lead to circumstances such as shortages of ventilators and that a coordinated national response would be paramount, according to documents obtained by the publication. Of the Trump administration officials present during the meeting, about 66% are no longer serving in the White House. What happened to I'm going to hire all the best people? Obviously, they don't want to work for you. Okay, we got to get out of here. Hey, if you like this type of information, donate to the African History Network. $, the AHN Show through Cash App. $, the AHN Show through Cash App and PayPal.me/the AHN Show. Through PayPal, go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on the yellow donate button there. All of my DVD lectures are there as well. Rest in peace to Dr. Leila Africa. Also, stay tuned with Pastor Mo. Remember, right now it's correct wrong behaviors, not over till we win Wakanda forever. Michael Imhotep. We'll talk to you next week. Peace.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jay Butler, Deputy Director for Infectious Diseases at CDC.
All right. All right, guys. Let's see. Okay, those on YouTube. How's everybody doing? Then we're on Facebook. How's everybody doing on Facebook? What's up, Bella Kabaka on Facebook? How's everybody doing on YouTube? Everybody share this broadcast. Invite your friends to tune in. I'll do another broadcast on Monday. So I do broadcast throughout the week so I can get deeper into this information. This is my Sunday night show, so I only have 2 hours here. Okay, so I can't get deeper to the information like I want to, but we'll be back in my second studio. We'll be back on we'll be broadcasting Monday. I'll probably do a broadcast Monday morning, sometime Monday morning, depending upon what time I get to bed tonight. I'll do a broadcast Monday morning because I want to deal with the international transatlantic slave trade being abolished March 2nd, 1807. A lot of our people don't understand that history. Even a lot of our people who are arguing for reparations, a lot of our people don't understand history and don't understand law. And we have to understand both history and law, even when we deal with politics and deal with, Donald Trump, deal with Congress, things like this. You have to understand history and law. Okay. All right. So those on Facebook, how's everybody doing? Run into some problems with the laptop tonight. I got to get this stuff checked out. We have my DVD lectures at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have bundle packs also available as well at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right, so look, we're gonna get out of here, guys. If you have any questions, you can email me at customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com or hit me up on Facebook or YouTube with any questions, okay? Is Pastor Mo coming in?
Yeah.
All right.
9:10 a.m. Can I get a
I gotta get out of here.
Yes, 9:10 a.m.
All right, y'all. Talk to y'all later. Peace.